What if World War II never happened? What if the deadliest war in human history never took place? What if tens of millions of lives were never lost, cities were never burned to ash, and the world never descended into global chaos? It's one of the most haunting what-if questions in human history. What if World War II never happened? Would humanity have found lasting peace, or simply delayed its own destruction? Imagine a world where the Treaty of Versailles had been fairer to Germany, where Adolf Hitler remained an obscure painter or failed politician, where nationalism, hate and revenge never fueled another global conflict. In this alternate reality, the 1930s still echo with economic hardship, but without the rise of fascism or a call to war. Europe, scarred by World War I, cautiously rebuilds, forming new alliances, seeking prosperity through trade rather than conquest. The great powers, Britain, France, the Soviet Union, Japan, and the United States, compete, but through politics, economics, and innovation rather than destruction. Without World War II, millions of soldiers and civilians would never die. The Holocaust would never scar humanity's conscience. Cities like Warsaw, Dresden, and Hiroshima would stand untouched, their cultures and architecture preserved. Families torn apart by war would have lived normal lives. Art, science, and culture would have flourished in ways we can only imagine. But would peace have truly lasted? The conditions that led to the war, economic depression, political instability, and ideological extremism, didn't vanish easily. Even without Hitler, tensions between nations still brewed beneath the surface. The Soviet Union, under Stalin, continued to expand its influence, while Japan's imperial ambitions in Asia were already in motion. A different kind of global rivalry might have emerged, one not fought with bombs and tanks, but with economics, espionage, and ideology. In this alternate timeline, the United States might not have become the superpower it is today. The massive industrial boom that World War II triggered, producing planes, ships, and weapons, would never have occurred. Women might not have entered the workforce en masse, delaying the social revolutions of the mid-20th century. Technological innovations like radar, jet engines, nuclear power, and early computers might have arrived decades later, stunting the progress that wartime necessity accelerated. The world would advance more slowly, perhaps more peacefully, but less dynamically. Imagine Europe in the 1940s. No rubble, no refugee crises, no divided Germany. Instead, cities like Berlin, Paris, and London thrive in economic competition. The League of Nations, instead of collapsing, evolves into a stronger peacekeeping body. The European Union, or something like it, might form earlier, uniting countries under diplomacy rather than after devastation. Yet without the shared trauma of war, would nations truly learn to cooperate? Would humanity have understood the cost of hatred deeply enough to prevent future conflicts? The colonial empires might have lasted longer too. Without the global instability of World War II, Britain and France could have maintained control over Africa and Asia for decades more. Independence movements in India, Indonesia, and Africa might have been delayed. The world map we know today, shaped by decolonization after the war, would look very different. Perhaps fewer nations would exist. Global equality might lag behind as the old empires cling to power and wealth. Then there's the question of technology. Many of the greatest leaps in science came from wartime innovation. Penicillin mass production, rocketry, jet propulsion, and even space exploration. Without the Manhattan Project, nuclear power might not exist. Without the space race, born from Cold War rivalry, humanity might never have reached the moon. The 20th century's greatest scientific achievements could have been delayed by decades. The internet, satellites, and GPS might still be dreams instead of realities, but perhaps humanity would have compensated in other ways. The money spent on war could have fueled education, infrastructure, and medicine. The world's brightest minds, Einstein, Fermi, Bohr, and countless others, would have focused on curing diseases, developing clean energy, and improving life instead of building weapons. The resources that went into tanks and bombs might have gone into science, art, and culture. Poverty could have been reduced, and cooperation between nations might have laid the foundation for a truly united planet. However, peace has its own challenges. Without the horrors of World War II, the world might never have created the United Nations, NATO, or international laws on human rights. The Nuremberg trials, which defined the concept of crimes against humanity, would never have occurred. Humanity might not have learned on a global scale that genocide, conquest, and tyranny must never be tolerated again. In this way, the absence of war might mean the absence of the moral awakening that followed it. And what about the Cold War? Without World War II, the United States and the Soviet Union might not have risen as rival superpowers. The balance of power could have looked entirely different. Maybe Europe would remain dominant, or perhaps Japan would lead Asia into a new industrial era. The ideological battle between capitalism and communism might have played out politically rather than militarily. Yet, human nature suggests competition would persist. If not through war, then through economics, propaganda, or technology. In this alternate timeline, we might live in a more multipolar world, many strong nations instead of two superpowers dominating the planet. Global politics would be complex, but potentially more stable. The arms race would be minimal, and nuclear weapons might never exist. Humanity could have avoided the constant fear of annihilation that defined the latter half of the 20th century. Yet, with no nuclear deterrent, could smaller wars have erupted unchecked? Perhaps humanity would still find ways to fight, just on a smaller, more frequent scale. Now imagine daily life in this world, the 1950s without Cold War paranoia, the 1960s without Vietnam, the 1980s without nuclear anxiety. Music, film, and art would evolve differently. No protest songs, no counterculture born from rebellion against war. Society might be calmer, but also less passionate, less driven to challenge authority. Sometimes it's pain and tragedy that spark change. Without the lessons of war, would humanity have the same empathy, unity, or drive for peace? So would this peaceful world truly be better? Or would it be a stagnant utopia, blind to its own fragility? War, for all its horror, forced nations to innovate, cooperate, and rebuild. It united enemies against greater evils and taught humanity what it means to lose everything. Without that crucible, would we ever learn compassion, or would arrogance, greed, and power still divide us until another war inevitably erupts? What do you think? Could humanity have stayed peaceful without ever fighting a second world war? Would our progress have slowed, or would we have found a higher path through cooperation? Could peace have endured, or would the next great conflict have simply worn a different name? Share your thoughts below, because this question is one that tests not just our history, but our very nature. The idea that World War II never happened invites deep reflection on what drives human progress. Is it innovation born of peace, or necessity born of destruction? Perhaps our greatest achievements are forged in both. The war was horrific, yet it united nations, accelerated science, and taught lessons that shaped our modern world. A world without it might have been gentler, but maybe less resilient, less aware of the consequences of hatred and power unchecked. In the end, imagining a world without World War II reminds us of one truth. Peace is not the absence of conflict, but the presence of understanding. The price of the war was immense, but its legacy reshaped humanity's conscience. Perhaps without it, we would still be searching for that understanding, blind to the depths of our own capacity for both creation and destruction. If you enjoyed this exploration, subscribe for more mind-bending what-if scenarios. Comment below what alternate histories hidden truths, or forgotten possibilities you want us to uncover next. Because in asking what if, we don't just rewrite history, we understand it.